Yours is a wonderful Australian story, Peter. Did you always know that it was unique, that it was special, that it was different, this journey of yours?
Yeah, for those in the room, good evening everyone. For those in the room who don't know, obviously I was born in Korea and through circumstances found myself in the southwest of Western Australia and grew up in a big family, and this is a long-winded story so you'll have to bear with me, but I was so happy playing sport and so happy in life. I didn't really know that I looked different, was different in a sheep and wheat farming community in Kojonup until the town bully actually told me, you know, you look nothing like your brothers. And I said, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? I don't look like my brothers. He said, well, go home and have a look in the mirror. Your eyes are squintier than the rest of your brothers. And that was a shock to me at the age of 6 or 7. I went home and gave myself a studious examination in the mirror and suddenly realised that, yes, my brothers were all fair-haired and looked a little bit different to me. So I had the heart-to-heart discussion with my parents, who are obviously here tonight, and they told me the story of how I came to be born in Korea and ended up in Australia. But to answer your question, it wasn't until I got to a more mature stage in life, Jared, 24, 25, where I realised that whether you're spiritual or whether you believe in fate or you believe in destiny, the serendipitous nature of the fact that I was able to end up in Australia playing Australian rules football was truly something that I was not going to give up on easily. A magnificent opportunity, and there was a real motivating force in my career to make the most, I was just speaking about it, to make the most of opportunity, and it came tough. It came really tough. I mean, I was delisted. There's probably not many in the Hall of Fame who were delisted after 1 year. But thankfully, I had the opportunity to go to a great club like North Melbourne, where I learnt a whole lot, was able to play in finals and grand finals and those sorts of things. And from about 24 or 25, there was no way I wasn't going to get the best out of myself after that.
Now, I'm in your hands here, Peter, and it's up to you, but did your birth mum ever see you play footy?
Yes, she did. In fact, without wanting to put anyone on the spot, I was going to mention it later, but for me, the support has always been about family and people that love you, and I've certainly been blessed with parents who brought me up and siblings who supported me massively. But I will say that from the time, it's something that you always think about, where you've come from, who your parents are. Unfortunately, I didn't have the courage to actually find my parents. My mother found me when I was about 25 years of age, and I'm forever thankful for that. She had the courage to make that first step, and she and her husband are actually here tonight with my mum and dad and my mother-in-law and my children. Thank you. But I remember playing in a game of football, Jared, and everyone else here, and it was actually a preliminary final against the Sydney Swans, which we lost. But I remember at one stage feeling goosebumps all over me and having a feeling like my birth mother was watching me play football. And when a little while later I spoke to her, it turned out that they'd actually tracked me down and worked it all out, and that was the game that they'd had through satellite feed and were watching there in California, which was extraordinary.
Serendipity indeed. Your first year at North Melbourne was a premiership year. You were a young fella just trying to find your feet, having already been delisted at one club. Were you vulnerable during that year, and what was the experience like?
Yeah, I mean, I'd been delisted in 1995, and Dennis Pagan just gave me an opportunity, which would have been very controversial. When you're young, you don't think about these sorts of things, but I imagine that he overruled the entire recruiting department at North Melbourne and said, no, I've seen something in this young guy. And it was a tough year. I was on the borderline all the time. Actually got dropped to play against my previous club, Fremantle, and that was rare with players coached by Dennis Pagan, because the one thing Dennis liked to do when you played against your old team, he'd always select you, because he would say, and the words are still ringing very clearly in my mind, desire is the greatest motivating force there is. I wasn't playing well enough, didn't deserve to. I played in an atrocious preliminary final against Brisbane in 1996, and Dennis was very much into assessment. Straight after the game, he'd line you all up and you'd go through every individual performance. And I was hiding. I was always strategic, though. I was hiding between Mick Martin and Wayne Carey, and they both played well and were Dennis's pets. So there was that angle, and also the fact that these are big guys, and if they lean forward with their big delts and I lean back, there was every possibility that Dennis wouldn't actually see me there in between the two of them. And he looked at me, and I was ready for the famous Dennis Pagan bake, and he just said, "Peter, you've let the biggest opportunity of your life pass you by." So I'm 19, been delisted, a little bit fragile, I have to say, Jared. What does that mean? A week out from a grand final, I think my place is in jeopardy. I was anxious about it, obviously, for 48 hours, and then Dennis did the most amazing thing. I was intimidated by him, I was scared of him, I respected him greatly, but on Monday morning he just came up to me very quietly and said, "You're playing in the grand final, train well, prepare well, I have the utmost confidence in you that you're going to be able to contribute." And that just made me feel like I was 6'1".
And you did play well, but by 99, that's when you were going. You had 31 and kicked 4 goals in a grand final. And then you went back, well, you played another year, won the best and fairest and went back to the Dockers. Now, this is a very significant moment in the history of the Fremantle Football Club. You are their first inductee. You captained them, you won best and fairest for them. I think you gained credibility for them. What does this mean to you to be the first Docker in?
It means a lot. First of all, I obviously acknowledge the wonderful career that I had at North Melbourne. It was a very difficult decision to come back to Western Australia. I made the decision, and certainly it's not lost on me the impact and importance of being Fremantle's first player in the Hall of Fame. I had a great time at Fremantle. I'd like to think in a small way that some of the players that you see taking all before them now were in some way influenced in those years that I played there. We played finals for the first time, we won finals for the first time, but to coin a phrase used by their current coach, they're going to write their own story, and I'm just a bystander watching on and hoping for the best.